Today we release a brand new segment called Inside Look. Thanks so much for joining me. Welcome to Ravens Rundown. I'm your host, Joey Peterson. I'll explain how Inside Look works in just a little bit, but just know you're going to want to stick around. I can promise you that we got the Ravens, we got the Raiders matching up tomorrow. I could not be more excited. And we've wanted to take down the Raiders report in subs. Now we want to take them down in likes, okay? Their video yesterday got 661 likes. Right now, this video's sitting at 0. Can we run up the score? Can we get that to like what, 700? I know that's a lot, but I know you can do it. So go ahead and like the video. So you find yourself sitting there and you're asking yourself, Joey, what is an inside look? Well, I'm glad you asked. So every single week, I'll be sitting down with the host of the team that the Ravens are playing. We cover a lot of teams here at Chat Sports, so I got a lot of inside information. So I sat down with Raiders Report host Mitchell Renz, even though we're kind of battling each other this week, and I kind of hate him right now. But I asked him, okay, what are the biggest storylines for the Raiders going into this game, and what are their biggest weaknesses on offense and on defense? So that way, you know, I could hear from the person who covers them every single day, how can the Ravens beat the Raiders, right? What needs to happen for the Ravens to be victorious on Sunday? And he let me in on some pretty great stuff. Let's start with the storylines. Storyline number 1. If the Raiders lose to the Ravens, will it be time to bench Minshew for O'Connell? And we talked about this a little bit in the preview for this matchup, right? They've kind of got a quarterback problem. And I heard it enough in the comment section, and I've heard it enough. Joey, Minshew beat the Ravens last year with the Colts, blah, blah, all this stuff. Well, he's good for one, just random fluke game a year. That's why they call it Minshew Magic. And also the Colts just flat out have a much better roster than the Raiders do. Last year, Aiden O'Connell led the team for passing yards and games played. He finished the season with 62.1 completion percentage, 2,218 yards, and 6.5 yards per pass. And he ended the season with 12 touchdowns. So with a guy like that waiting in the wings behind Gardner Minshew, the question is, how will he handle that pressure, okay? He hasn't been a starter. He hasn't been looked at in the eyes and said, hey, you're got to be the guy since 2020. Since COVID happened, right? It's been a little bit of a long time. It's been a long journey to where he is now. So he needs to try to keep that job, right? But how does he feel about the pressure? Because there's a lot of Raiders fans. There's a lot of people in Las Vegas that genuinely think Aiden O'Connell is a better option than Gardner Minshew is. So when you're looking at Gardner Minshew and you're saying, hey, you're the guy until you're not, how's he going to handle that, right? This could be his final game as a starter. I think he played pretty well last week. We'll dive into that in just a little bit. But if he keeps putting up, if he puts up some bad numbers this week, and especially if he kind of stacks that on week after week, his time may run short. Every game counts for Gardner. And I think it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out on Sunday. So I'm going to set the over because I think the Ravens have the best secondary in the league with Marlon Humphrey, Brandon Stevens, Nate Wiggins, Kyle Hamilton. I could go on. I'm going to set the over-under for 1.5 interceptions thrown by Gardner Minshew. You taking the over? You taking the under? I'm going over all day long. I think they can get 2 pretty easily. My second biggest storyline going into this game is, will Raiders offensive coordinator Luke Getsy be more aggressive in week 2, right? Will Getsy be more gutsy, right? As they're saying. Here's a quote from Antonio Pierce following the Chargers game about Luke Getsy and the offensive aggression. He said, a big part of our game is our identity in being physical and being stout at the line of scrimmage. And that didn't happen. Defensively, it did until the fourth quarter, and they cracked us. It was a couple fits. Again, all fixable things. When you talk about our offense, we got playmakers. We got to get the balls into their hands. And I'm looking at Zach Orr here, right? I'm looking at him and saying, be aggressive early. Put them on their butt early. Do what Los Angeles, exactly what they did to the Raiders. Because you saw what that made the Raiders do, right? You saw when you can get them out of a rhythm early, they don't have a good enough quarterback play. They don't have a strong enough, I think, offensive identity to bounce back from that. So can you do something about it? Can you be aggressive? Can you go out there and punch them in the mouth first? I think that's going to be crucial. And I think you got to dial up a little more blitzes, Zach. I love you. I'm so happy you're here as a defensive coordinator. And I honestly think you did a really good job against the Chiefs for your first ever game as a DC going against Andy Reid. But can we dial up a little bit more pressure? Because last year, the Ravens averaged to blitz on 20% of the snaps. And that was low. That was 28th in the NFL. But last week against Kansas City, only 10% of them. And I know you're going against Patrick Mahomes, one of the greatest quarterbacks ever. Probably the greatest quarterback that is currently playing football. But can you dial that up a little bit more for Gardner Minshew? I not only think you can, but I think you should. That's a guy that needs to be under pressure because that's a guy who cannot handle it, right? Patrick can, Gardner can't. So get to him and get to him early. The third Raiders storyline going into this one. Can the Raiders offensive line hold up against Baltimore? They had a rough day against the Chargers, and the Chargers made them pay for it. The Chargers front seven last Sunday racked up 4 sacks, 3 tackles for loss, held the Raiders to 71 rush yards with 3.2 yards per carry. That was 30th best in the National Football League. So can the Ravens, gosh, all right, this is a tough matchup for me. I'm not going to lie. But can the Ravens do what the Chargers did, right? And I know they got Khalil Mack, and I know they've got Joey Bosa. But other than those two, their linebackers aren't as deep as the Ravens are. I don't think they have as much defensive line depth. So all you got to do, right, is hit them early and hit them often. And I think you got a little more depth than the team that was able to do it just last week, okay? So can you control the line of scrimmage? Can you control it early? Can you take advantage of that offensive line? We'll get into more numbers later, but those are kind of the 3 storylines that we're looking at. And speaking of storylines, and speaking of this game, I'll be live for it, right? We're going live at 10 a.m. Eastern time. Is that right? No, noon Eastern time. 11 Central because the game is at 1 Eastern and at noon Central. So join me. I'll be rocking solo. We'll be having a lot of fun. We'll tailgate for the first hour. I'll be live for the entire game. If you joined the stream last week, it was a blast. We had awesome numbers, awesome audience participation. Come hang out with us again. But if you're not going to join us, I hope you go into the game. And if you do go to the game, well, I hope you use Game Time to get your tickets because Game Time is the place to go for the best seats at the lowest prices guaranteed. I promise you, you're going to want to give Game Time a shot. If you're so excited the season's finally here and want to get tickets to the big game lockdown, again, you're going to want to use Game Time. Game Time is the only place I go when I'm trying to get tickets to any college football or NFL game. Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets to see your favorite teams play live even easier. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. The tool highlights the best deals, including great and amazing deals, which are the highest value seats at the time. For some events, Game Time Picks also identifies a super deal, which is the best seat value in the venue. Guys, Game Time is the only place I go when I want to get tickets. Me and my buddies are going to see our Tennessee Volunteers take on the Oklahoma Sooners in just a week and a half, and we got our tickets through Game Time because it's the easiest place to do it for the best prices, and you get to see exactly what you'll be looking at before you even buy the tickets. So head on over to Game Time. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code CHATSPORTS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code CHATSPORTS for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time! So let's go into the offensive weaknesses. And they got a lot, okay? We're going to start with the interior offensive line. And I know you're probably saying again, and I'm sorry to be just like saying your thoughts out loud, but I know y'all so well at this point. I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, Joey, our interior offensive line kind of struggles too. And they did a little bit, but we're talking about the Raiders here. So their PFF grades, not great. Dylan Parham, he was awesome. He's their right guard. But when you look at their left guard and when you look at their center with Cody Whitehair and Andre James, pretty subpar grades, Cody Whitehair with a 47.7. Also, ironic that a guy whose last name is Whitehair has 0 hair, but I digress. Andre James with a 53.3 PFF grade. And it showed, right? If you look at this tweet from Warren Sharp, he said, Antonio Pierce wants to build a physical run-first team in week 1. Raiders running backs gained negative 13.8 EPA on rushes. Worst in the NFL. Raiders running backs produce 16.7% success rate. Worst in the NFL. On the road in Baltimore, will they match up better? And I don't think so, right? They earned negative 13.8 expected points added per rush. That's horrific. And I have a lot of confidence in the guys that we've got in the middle, in Travis Jones, in Michael Pierce, in Broderick Washington. And if I'm Zach Orr, I'm telling my best guys, and I'm telling Roquan Smith anytime I'm sending him, hey, go right over the left guard's face. Run a mother in the face, as Marshawn Lynch would say, right? Go right at him. A 47.7 PFF grade. I kind of think I could do better. I mean, that's probably a little dramatic, but that's pretty bad. Next up on their offensive weaknesses is the quarterback play. And again, I don't want to drill in too much on this because I know Gardner Minshew beat Baltimore with the Colts last year. But you can't say this isn't one of their weaknesses. Now, he did have a pretty impressive throw chart last week. A lot you can see within that 5-yard range, but he hit a decent amount of shots after 10 yards. But it's just the fact that throughout his entire career, he's just been incredibly inconsistent. If he could do this every game, he'd be a starting quarterback for a much better franchise, right? But he's not. The Raiders are taking a shot with him. They're saying, hey, save us. Maybe we could do something with you. And we all know next year at this time, they're going to have Shedeur Sanders, or they're going to have Carson Beck back there, and they're not going to have Gardner Minshew. Heck, they might not even have him back there in week 10. But this has been something that they've been looking at all season long, saying, man, we've got a pretty decent roster. We just got to get better at quarterback. And Minshew's fine. He's going to be all right. But he can make mistakes. And I think this is the defense that's going to make him make mistakes. And their last offensive weakness is Luke Getsy's vanilla offense. And that quote, those quotes mean that's a legit quote from our Raiders Report host. He's got a vanilla offense. But I kind of didn't tell him this next part because this is what I'm thinking. I'm like, yo, Mitch, it's vanilla because they lack talent, right? It's hard to not have a vanilla offense with Gardner Minshew as your quarterback. It's hard not to have a vanilla offense when Zamir White is your running back 1. And after Devontae Adams, you're really suffering in that wide receiver room. So they're vanilla because they kind of have some vanilla talent surrounding them. Sorry, hate to say it. Speaking of the Raiders, I've got a challenge for you guys. And I got this because I heard Mitch send his minions into the Ravens rundown. I want you to go to the Raiders Report most recent video and just spam Ravens as many times as you can. And I'm not saying in the same comment bar. I'm saying Ravens, 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 Ravens. Just take that thing over, okay? Because they're trying to do it on Ravens rundown, and I'm not rocking with that. So head on over there right now. On to the defensive weaknesses. And this one might surprise some people because they got Max Crosby, who's one of the best edge rushers in football. But behind him, they kind of lack depth at that position, okay? They kind of lack a decent bit of depth in that position. And when you look at how they fared against the Chargers when rushing the passer, not great, right? They only created pressure on 32.1% of Herbert's dropbacks, which was good for 20th in the NFL. Now, the Ravens are kind of in a unique position where you almost invite pressure because you have a quarterback that's so dynamic. But if you also let Lamar Jackson just sit back there and pick you apart, he can do that as well. And that's what makes him such a great quarterback, okay? Next up, run defense. And honestly, these all three kind of go into the next one. We can even talk about the next one, defensive line depth. Are you getting a pattern here, right? They kind of struggle on the defensive line. And where do you dominate football games? In the trenches on the defensive line. Let's talk about that run defense for a little bit. A very familiar foe, J.K. Dobbins. Lined up against the Raiders, absolutely torched them last week. 10 carries, 135 yards, 13.5 yards per carry, and 1 touchdown. And outside of Wilkins and Crosby, it's just not great. right? They don't have a lot of guys that they feel confident that can step up and that can make plays. They don't really have a ton of guys that they feel confident can step up and just be serviceable. This is an area that you attack, okay? This is an area that you take advantage of. I want to see Todd Monken and this offensive team run the ball 60 times, okay? I know. I want to see Zay Flowers get the ball in his hands. I want to see Isaiah Likely get the ball in his hands. That's going to come at another date because with this defense, where you attack them is running the football. And you got one of the best guys in the country at attacking defenses by running the football in Derrick Henry and Lamar Jackson as well. So that's it for Inside Look, but I want to hear from you guys one last time. What's your score prediction, okay? We're sitting here. It's Saturday. Happy Saturday to everybody. We're one day away. You let me know your score prediction. I'm still rocking with my 38-10, but you let me know down there in the comments section. And for the last time, to round this out, because if you're still sitting with us, then you're a real one. Go down and like the video. Look at what producer Reed's doing right now. He's flashing a little purple, a little gold. Like the video for him, but most importantly, like it to run it up on the Raiders Report. I will see you guys tomorrow at noon Eastern at 11 Central for the second watch party of the season.